Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to my channel, Do Ministry Gaming, and today I'm going to be showing you how you can craft your very own endgame self-curse Blade Vortex bow. If you're curious about the build itself, I do have a build guide on that, so I will link that in the description below. But otherwise, on the screen here are two bows. The one on the left is what I would consider a min-max bow, sort of the ultimate endgame weapon for the build that I've shown in my build guide. This, of course, is quite difficult to obtain, quite expensive to either craft or purchase, versus the one on the right is what I would consider a much more realistic end game goal, something that is quite obtainable, and the one I'll be walking you through today in the video on how to craft. Now, the one on the right is actually even slightly better than the one I'm using on my character right now and the one I've showcased in my build guide. So if you end up with the one on the right, you should be quite happy with that. It should do the job quite nicely. And then anything above and beyond this one on the right, which is anything that has that's closer to the one on the left, would be definitely a nice to have, but not a need to have by any means. With that said, at the end of this crafting guide, I will spend a quick minute to show the one on the left and sort of the talk about the extra steps that you're going to need to take if this is ultimately the one that you want to end up crafting versus the one on the right. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so to start, I'm going to quickly run you through the TLDR version. So the first step would be to find yourself a bow with a nice implicit modifier on it. There are a number of different options, regular or synthesized, which I'll talk about in detail later. Then you essence craft with Essence of Woe until you get +1 socketed gems, and if you're lucky, the global crit multi as well. But if you're not, the third step would be to harvest craft that global crit multi onto it. Now, I know that's changing in 3.14, but as of 3.13, that's how you would obtain this global crit multi modifier on this bow. Then you multi-mod it with socketed gems and double damage. And then finally, you can quality craft it, or you can do that really anytime you want. And then if you're crafting the endgame bow with the white sockets, you'll obviously do the white sockets. And then the 30 quality is actually something you're going to have to do up front. But in this guide here, we're just going to go with the 20 quality for now. All right, so step one is to find yourself a nice base bow with a nice implicit modifier to start the craft on. The bow does need to be eye level 73 plus. However, you do not require any type of special influence on this bow, which makes it a lot easier base to start with, as well as eye level 73 is not that high either. Now, what you do want is a nice implicit, and there are a number of different options that you can go with. The cheapest and the simplest ones to obtain are the crit multi bows. These are just base bows that you can get. And the ones that roll crit multi are recurve, sniper, and assassin. It doesn't matter which one. They all have the same crit multi roll, and none of the other attributes on the bow will matter for your build. So fizz damage, crit chance, attacks per second, none of that matters to the build. So these bows, for all intents and purposes, are the exact same. Go with the whichever one you can obtain. Now, if you want to take it that one step further, you can start with a synthesized base bow, since you don't need any influence. And the best synthesis that you can get is the +1 socketed support gems. That will do more damage than all of the rest of these. The other ones that you can get for synthesis to consider are Explodey. Now, you will be getting Explodey on your chest, so you don't necessarily need it. However, if you did end up getting it on your bow, you can drop it off of your chest and roll something else on the chest, of course. Or synthesis can also roll spell damage, so if you want to go that route, you can as well. All right, so step number 2 will be spamming Deafening Essence of Woe, which is the essence that gives you the spell damage on the bow. And you're going to spam that until you get +1 socketed gems. Now, once you get that, you're going to need to clean the bow up a little bit. That will allow you to sort of do the rest of the crafting. Ideally, you just have those two things on the bow, or if you can roll it together with the T1 crit multi, even better. But basically, what you're going to need to have for the next steps is 2 open suffixes and 1 open prefix for the multi-mod. And then if you didn't get the crit multi on the roll as well, you're going to have a slot open for the crit multi as well. Now, if this is a 3.13 guide, so if it's still 3.13, what you would do is you'd roll the bow until you get plus socketed gems. You would harvest craft to remove all the other mods, and then you would target the global crit strike multi, which I'll talk about in step 3, through harvest crafting. Now, if this is 3.14, which GGG has already announced that they're going to remove some of the annul options and the annul augment options from harvest, this is going to make the bow much harder to craft. And what you're going to need to do is basically roll essences until you get the +1 Sonic Gems. And if you want this exact bow, you're going to need to also roll the crit multi at the same time. So you might have to settle for a lower tier, or you're going to have to get real lucky to get the T1, or you can just axe the crit multi completely and hope for some other mod that might be useful as well. And then you're, like I say, you're going to need to have 2 open suffixes and 1 prefix to do the multi-modding. So if this was, again, 3.14 with no harvest, to do that, you're going to have to get some lucky annuls in. And if you miss those, then you're going to have to basically re-roll the bow with essences again in order to get to the state of +1 Saga Gems and spell damage and or crit multi as well. All right, so step number 3 will be to get the crit multi onto the bow. There's really 2 options to get that. The first is get it along with your essence rolling when you were rolling for the +1 Saga Gems to also get the crit strike multi, which will be difficult to do. The second option would be to harvest craft the crit multi onto the bow. What you're going to need is 1 open suffix, and then you're going to need to augment critical onto the bow. And when you augment critical, you're going to get one of 2 things, either a crit chance or a crit multi roll. Now, if you ended up with crit chance or a low tier crit multi that you're not happy with, you're going to have to remove add critical until you do get a high tier crit multi that you are happy with. Now, again, that is 3.13 harvest crafting. GGG did put out a development manifesto on harvest crafting for 3.14 changes that are coming. If you're not familiar with what those are or you want to learn more about it, I did put out a video on that explaining all of that a couple days ago. So I will put a link in the description below for that. If you're curious, you can go and check that out and find out what that's all about. But if they are removing harvest crafting or making the changes that they want to for 3.14, then the remove add crit option will no longer be there. The augment crit will still be there because this is a non-influenced bow. If you did it with a non-influenced bow, then you can still, spam essences, get the +1 gems, and then augment crit. And if it fails, then you're just going to have to restart and then do that process, step 1 to 3, over and over again until you get that crit strike multi roll if this was 3.14. All right, so step 4 is pretty straightforward. You need to multi-mod your bow now. Multi-mod is 2x. It comes from the Pale Court encounter. And then +2 Saga support gems is also 2 exalts, which is a Syndicate Unveil, as well as double damage is also Syndicate Unveil, and that will be 1 divine to craft. So all in all, it's going to cost you 4 exalts and 1 divine in order to get the multi-mod onto the bow. All right, so step number 5 will be to get an enchant onto your bow. Now, these are harvest crafts, and there's 2 pretty good options that you can go with. The first is 1% area effect per 4% quality. The other is 1% elemental damage per 2% quality. And again, these are harvest crafts. However, there's been no real mention in the 3.14 development manifesto as to any changes coming for these enchants or removal of them. So you should be able to continue on with that until further notice. And once you've done that, you'll have completed a bow that looks like the one on the screen. And again, this is the sort of the realistic, attainable version. And if you end up with something like this, you should be pretty happy. This is a really good bow and should put you in a very good spot in terms of the power of your character. Now, if you do want to take it the step further, like I say, you can min-max the bow even further. And here's the steps. I'll just quickly talk through them as to what you're going to need to add to get that from the realistic bow to this min-max bow. So first and foremost, you're going to need a synthesized bow with a better implicit, and the one I would go with is +1 level of Saga support gems will be the strongest option. And once you have that, you're going to want to, before you do any type of crafting, quality it up to 30. And the way to do that is through fossil crafting with the perfect fossil. Roll that on the bow until you get 30%, and then the rest will be the same. You're going to be rolling essences until you get +1 Saga gems, and then hopefully crit one, a T1 crit multi as well. And if not, you can get that on afterwards, at least in 3.13. Or in 3.14, you just won't have the remove add crit option anymore. You can still just repeat this over and over until you get the T1 crit. And then after that, get the multi-mod on there, get the enchant, and then somewhere along the way, if you want to go all the way, you can get the 6 white sockets as well. And in order to get the 6 white sockets, you need to harvest craft. There's a particular harvest craft that lets you change one socket to a white socket. And so you're going to have to do that multiple times in order to get to these 6 white sockets. You can start with 3 from the syndicate bench crafting and then sort of do 3 more harvest crafting to get the other 3 sockets white. All right, everybody, there you have it. A step-by-step guide on how you can craft your very own self-curse Blade Vortex bow. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found the video helpful. And if you did, please like and subscribe. I also stream on Twitch Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Times are in the description below. If you have any questions about this guide or any of my other content, feel free to pop by my stream and ask, or leave a comment below. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.